The elevator doors closed behind Marcus as he stepped into the lobby. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Another rejection. Another dead end. He crumpled the resume in his fist, fighting back tears as he thought of his daughter waiting at home, believing in him. What he didn't know was that Elise Blackwood, the billionaire CEO who had just dismissed him, was watching through the glass walls of her empire, something tugging at her heart that would change both their lives forever. If you've ever felt like giving up just before your miracle was about to happen, this story will remind you why you should never lose hope. Like and subscribe if you believe second chances can come when we least expect them. Marcus Jenkins checked his watch for the 5th time as he sat in the pristine waiting area of Blackwood Enterprises. The leather chair felt too expensive beneath him, a stark contrast to the worn sofa in his small apartment. His interview suit, the only one he owned, had been carefully pressed the night before while his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, slept in the next room. The babysitter he couldn't really afford was charging by the hour, and every minute that ticked by in this waiting room was costing him money he didn't have. "Mr. Jenkins?" The receptionist's voice cut through his thoughts. "Ms. Blackwood will see you now." Marcus stood, straightening his tie and taking a deep breath. This job would change everything. Health insurance for Lily's asthma medication, a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, maybe even enough to start a college fund. He'd been unemployed for 4 months since the tech company he worked for downsized, and his savings were nearly depleted. The corner office of Elise Blackwood was exactly what you'd expect from someone Forbes had recently named the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, minimalist furniture in shades of white and chrome, and not a single personal item in sight. The woman herself sat behind a glass desk, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Designer glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed what Marcus assumed was his resume. "Sit," she said without looking up. Marcus complied, folding his hands in his lap to hide their slight trembling. "Your resume says you were at Tech Vision for 8 years, Elise finally said, her eyes meeting his. They were startlingly blue and completely unreadable. "Senior developer, team lead for 3 years. Why did you leave?" "I didn't leave by choice, Miss Blackwood. The company downsized after the merger, and in 4 months you haven't found suitable employment?" Her eyebrow arched slightly. "That seems unusual for someone with your qualifications." Marcus swallowed. "I've had interviews, but I've been selective about positions that would allow me to maintain a work-life balance. I'm a single father." Something flickered across her face, annoyance perhaps. "Mr. Jenkins, at Blackwood Enterprises, we expect our senior staff to be available whenever needed. Projects don't wait for convenient hours. I understand that, and I'm fully committed to the work. I just need predictable hours when possible." "My daughter is not my concern," Elise cut him off. "This position requires dedication and availability. Your personal circumstances are your own to manage." Marcus felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. He'd heard variations of this before in other interviews. The unspoken message was clear: single parents were liabilities. "I can assure you that my personal life has never interfered with my professional performance," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "My references will confirm that I've consistently exceeded expectations, often working remotely after hours to ensure projects are completed on time." Elise glanced down at his resume again. "Your technical skills are impressive, but I'm not convinced you're the right fit for our culture. We need people who can put the company first, without distractions." The word hung in the air between them. Distractions. As if his daughter, the center of his universe since his wife died 3 years ago, was something to be dismissed, an inconvenience. Marcus felt something shift inside him. 4 months of rejections, of apologizing for being a parent, of trying to prove he could be both, a good father and a valuable employee. Something snapped. "Ms. Blackwood," he said quietly, standing up, "thank you for your time, but I don't think I'm interested in the position after all." Surprise registered on her face. Clearly, candidates didn't often walk out on Elise Blackwood. "Excuse me? My daughter isn't a distraction. She's the reason I work as hard as I do. Any company that sees parenthood as a liability rather than recognizing the skills it develops, multitasking, crisis management, patience, efficiency, is missing out on exceptional employees. His voice remained calm, but his hands were shaking. "I hope you find the right person for your team." He turned and walked toward the door, his heart pounding. He just walked away from a six-figure salary, comprehensive benefits, and the security his family desperately needed. But something about sitting there, being judged for the one thing in his life he was most proud of, had been unbearable. "Mr. Jenkins," Elise called after him, but he kept walking, through the outer office, past the startled receptionist, and into the elevator. In the lobby, Marcus leaned against the wall, closing his eyes briefly. What had he done? Lily was counting on him. The rent was due next week. Her medication needed to be refilled. He crumpled his resume in his fist, fighting the urge to punch the wall. Outside, the spring air hit his face, and he took a deep breath. He'd figure something out. He always did. Maybe he could pick up some freelance work, or finally accept his brother's offer to move in with him temporarily. Anything to keep Lily safe and cared for. "Mr. Jenkins, wait!" The voice behind him was familiar but unexpected. Marcus turned to see Elise Blackwood herself hurrying down the steps of her building, looking decidedly less composed than she had in her office. Her heels clicked rapidly on the pavement as she approached him. "You forgot this," she said, holding out a folder. It wasn't his. He hadn't brought anything but his resume, which was still crumpled in his hand. "I don't think that's mine," he replied, confused. "It is now," she said, pushing it toward him. "It's information about the position, the real position I had in mind for you." Marcus hesitantly took the folder but didn't open it. "I don't understand." Elise glanced around, seeming uncomfortable having this conversation on the street. "Walk with me," she said, not waiting for his response before starting toward a small park across from the building. Curiosity overcoming his better judgment, Marcus followed. They found a bench away from the lunch crowd, and Elise sat, smoothing her skirt in a gesture that seemed more nervous than practical. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this conversation," she began, her voice lower now, less commanding. "The position I interviewed you for was a test. The real opening is for our new family-friendly initiative." Marcus stared at her. Family-friendly initiative? Blackwood Enterprises has a retention problem with parents, particularly single parents. We lose talented people because our policies are outdated. The board has finally agreed to a pilot program with flexible hours, on-site childcare, and remote work options. But I needed someone who wouldn't just take advantage of the benefits. I needed someone who would fight for them, who understood their value. So the interview was what? A psychological test? Elise had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. More of a character assessment. I needed to see if you would stand up for your priorities. Most candidates just agree to whatever terms I set, then either burn out or quit. Within months. Marcus opened the folder. Inside was a job offer with a salary even higher than the position he'd interviewed for, along with details of flexible hours, work-from-home options, and a childcare subsidy. "Why me?" he asked, still suspicious. "Your former boss at Tech Vision is an old friend. When I mentioned I was looking for someone to head this initiative, he recommended you immediately, said you were not only one of his best developers but also the most efficient. You never wasted time, always delivered on schedule, and somehow managed to be there for your daughter too." Marcus remembered his former boss, a father of three himself, who had always been understanding about doctor's appointments and school events. So the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley is launching a family-friendly program? He couldn't help asking. A small smile touched Elise's lips. The Ice Queen is a useful persona in board meetings. Reality is more complicated. She hesitated. "My sister is a single mother. She's brilliant, smarter than me actually. But she had to leave tech entirely because she couldn't find a company willing to accommodate her needs as a parent. It's a waste of talent, and it's bad business." For the first time, Marcus saw beyond the polished exterior to something more human. Why the act in the interview? Because this program will face resistance. I need someone who won't back down when challenged, who truly believes in what we're trying to build. She looked directly at him. "You didn't just disagree with me in there. You stood up and walked away from a job you clearly need because some things matter more to you than a paycheck. That's exactly the kind of integrity this position requires." Marcus looked down at the offer again, hardly daring to believe this turn of events. I'd need to see the childcare facilities before I commit, and understand the expectations for after-hours availability. Elise nodded. Of course, the childcare center is still being renovated, but I can show you the plans. As for after hours, we're implementing a rotating on-call system so no one person is always responsible. We're trying to create sustainable policies, not just window dressing. And the board is on board with all this? They're cautiously supportive. They've seen the data on retention costs and the benefits of diversity, but they're watching closely. This pilot needs to succeed. Marcus considered the woman beside him, so different from the cold executive who had dismissed his concerns less than an hour ago. Why did you come after me yourself? You could have sent an assistant. Elise was quiet for a moment. Because I respect what you did in there. It reminded me of why I started this company in the first place. To create something different, something better. She stood up. The offer stands for 48 hours. Take the time to think about it. Discuss it with your daughter. This would be a partnership, Mr. Jenkins, not just employment. As she turned to leave, Marcus called after her. It's Marcus. She looked back, that small smile returning. Elise, she replied, then walked back toward the towering building with her name on it. 2 days later, Marcus accepted the position. The real work was just beginning. The first few weeks at Blackwood Enterprises were a whirlwind for Marcus. The family-friendly initiative, officially named Blackwood Balance, was still largely theoretical, and he found himself in meeting after meeting helping to shape policies that would affect not just his life, but potentially hundreds of other working parents. Elise was different in these meetings than she had been in his interview, still formidable, still demanding excellence, but also genuinely open to ideas and surprisingly knowledgeable about the challenges facing working parents. She had clearly done her research. The on-site childcare center will be ready in 3 months, she informed him one afternoon as they reviewed architectural plans. In the meantime, we've arranged partnerships with 3 nearby facilities, and will subsidize costs for employees in the program. That's great, Marcus said, but what about school-age children? My daughter is 7. She needs after-school care, not daycare. Elise made a note. Good point. We should look into transportation from local schools and an after-school program here. Maybe homework help, some STEM activities, and arts, Marcus added. Not every child is going to be interested in coding at 7. Elise looked up, seeming genuinely surprised. Of course, I hadn't considered. My experience is limited. It was the first time Marcus had seen her admit any limitation, and it humanized her further. That's why you hired me, right? To fill in these gaps? She nodded, a hint of that small smile appearing, among other reasons. As the weeks passed, Marcus found himself working closely with Elise almost daily. The Ice Queen persona appeared primarily for board meetings and difficult negotiations with external partners in their planning sessions. She was focused but approachable, often asking about Lily and how certain policies might affect their daily routine. One evening, as they worked late finalizing the childcare center specifications, Marcus realized it was past 7, and he hadn't called to check in with Lily and the sitter. I need to make a quick call, he said, standing abruptly. Elise glanced at her watch, looking startled. Of course, I didn't realize the time. Marcus stepped into the hallway, calling home. Lily answered, her voice bright as she told him about her day at school and the science project she was working on with the babysitter's help. I'll be home soon, Lilypad, he promised. Save me some dinner, okay? When he returned to the conference room, Elise was packing up her materials. We should call it a day, she said. This is exactly the kind of situation our program is supposed to prevent. It's fine, Marcus assured her. Lily's happy, the sitter's there. We can finish this. Elise shook her head. No, we're building this program because we believe work shouldn't consistently take priority over family. I need to practice what I preach. She hesitated. Would you like to bring Lily to the office tomorrow after school? She could see where you work and I'd like to meet her. Her input on the after-school space could be valuable. The invitation surprised Marcus. Are you sure? The office isn't really set up for kids yet. All the more reason to get a child's perspective now, before we finalize the designs. The next day, Lily Jenkins visited Blackwood Enterprises for the first time. Marcus had worried she might be intimidated by the sleek corporate environment, but his daughter had inherited his adaptability and her mother's confidence. She charmed the receptionist, asked the security guard thoughtful questions about his job, and approached Elise Blackwood without a hint of the trepidation most adults felt around the formidable CEO. "You're very tall," Lily observed when they were introduced. "Do you like being tall?" Elise, caught off guard by the direct question, considered it seriously. "I do, most of the time. It helps in meetings when I need people to listen to me." Lily nodded sagely. "I'm the shortest in my class. Nobody listens to me, even when I have the right answer." Something shifted in Elise's expression. "That must be frustrating." "It is. Dad says I should just keep speaking up anyway, because someday they'll have to listen." "Your dad is very wise," Elise said, glancing at Marcus with unexpected warmth. "And he's right. I had the same problem when I was younger. Not about height, but about being heard. Sometimes you have to make a little noise to get people's attention." "Like how?" Lily asked, clearly intrigued. "Well, when I was starting my company, I once stood on a chair during a meeting when the investors weren't taking me seriously." Lily giggled. "Did it work?" They were so surprised they finally listened to my ideas." Elise leaned down slightly. "But that's a secret between us, okay? I have a reputation to maintain." "I'm good at secrets," Lily assured her solemnly. As they toured the space being renovated for the childcare and after-school programs, Lily offered opinions with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. The quiet room needed more pillows. The art area should have an easel by the window because that's where the light is prettiest. The reading nook needed a better selection of books, not just the boring educational ones. Elise took notes on everything, treating Lily's suggestions with the same seriousness she would give to any consultant. By the end of the tour, Lily was comfortably holding Elise's hand and chattering about her school's inadequate playground equipment. "You know," Elise said thoughtfully, "Blackwood has a community outreach program. Perhaps we should look into playground grants for local schools." Marcus watched this interaction with a mixture of amusement and something deeper he couldn't quite name. Seeing the powerful, often intimidating Elise Blackwood crouching down to examine a bookshelf from a child's eye level, earnestly discussing the merits of different swing sets with his daughter, it revealed layers to her he hadn't expected. As they were leaving, Lily turned to Elise. "Can I come back sometime? Dad says you're making a place where kids can come after school while their parents work. I could help test it out." Elise looked to Marcus, silently asking permission. When he nodded, she smiled at Lily. "I would like that very much. We need experts like you to make sure we get it right." In the elevator heading down, Lily was quiet for a moment before asking, "Dad, is Miss Blackwood your..."